What a week that was for Premier League football. As we do every week, we are back with my Game Week 23 predictions. But first, we're going to take a look back at Game Week 22, see if I got any results right, and yeah, we're going to talk about those games. We're going to start off with Chelsea versus Fulham. Now, I predicted it to be a 1-1 draw, but it was actually 0-0. Chelsea once again failed to get a result at Stamford Bridge. We did see new record signing Enzo Fernandez get his start, but it didn't really impress in this draw. Fair play to Fulham for holding out. Chelsea, they had some good chances, but Fulham were also very, very decent. So it's not looking good for Chelsea at the moment. And then move on to the Saturday fixtures, and we start with Everton versus Arsenal. Now, I predicted, like I think many other people did, that Arsenal would win. I predicted 3-0 to Arsenal. It's actually just 1-0 to Everton. Now, I did allude to it in last week's video, and it happened. Sean Dyche is back and already making waves in the Premier League. What a brilliant result for Everton, and very embarrassing for Arsenal. It could have been even worse for Arsenal, but luckily some results went their way. And then move on to Brighton Hove Albion versus Bournemouth. I predicted 3-0 to Brighton. It was actually just 1-0. Bournemouth gave Brighton a tougher game than expected, but it was that man Mitoma again who secured all 3 points for the Seagulls. Bournemouth have caused a few sides problems this season, but I still think they might be nailed on for relegation though. And then move on to Manchester United versus Crystal Palace. I predicted 2-0 to Manchester United, but it was actually 2-1. Casemiro saw red as Manchester United saw off the Eagles. United continue their fine form as they look to cement a position in the top 4. So far it's looking good for them, whereas Palace, it's not looking too great for them. Brentford versus Southampton. I predicted 3-0. It was 3-0. We fucking nailed it, lads. We actually got a prediction right. Who would have guessed? Brentford comfortably beat the Saints in a match which piled some more pressure on Nathan Jones, who also had some choice words post-match. Brilliant from the Bees though, they are playing some brilliant football this season and continuing in very fine form. And then move on to Wolverhampton Wanderers versus Liverpool. I predicted 1-0 to Liverpool. It was 3-0 to Wolves. I knew Liverpool would struggle, but I didn't know they struggled this much. Wolves absolutely dominated Liverpool, and it begs the question, how long does Klopp have left? How long can these results not go their way before, he gets the sack? He has a 7-year period and then he dips, and he's in his 7th year at Liverpool now, and the results are showing. It might be time for him to go. Then move on to Aston Villa versus Leicester. I predicted 1-0. It was actually 4-2 to Leicester. Despite the Foxes going 1 down early on, they managed to beat back Villa and claim all 3 points. It was a 6-goal thriller that did not disappoint any neutrals watching. And what a debut from Tete as well. And then for the final Saturday fixture, we move on to Newcastle United versus West Ham United. I predicted 2-0 to Newcastle. It was actually 1-1. Newcastle started really well, but weren't as solid at the back as they usually are, as West Ham managed to equalise. Huge draw for the Hammers though. They really need all the points they can get at the moment to escape the relegation clash. And then move on to Sunday's fixtures, and we start off with Nottingham Forest versus Leeds United. I predicted 2-1 to Nottingham Forest, and it was 1-0. It was a huge, huge win for Forest, as Leeds, they had most of the ball but could not beat Keylor Navas. There's a little switch up at half time, and we really made Leeds more ineffective. Brennan Johnson's brilliant strike meant all 3 points stayed in Nottingham. What a strike it was. And then move on to Tottenham Hotspur versus Manchester City. I predicted 3-1 to Man City. It was actually 1-0 to Tottenham, and Tottenham grabbed the annual win over Man City as Harry Kane broke the Tottenham goal scoring record, scoring his 267th goal for the club. What an achievement. And something really feels off with this City side. I'm not sure what's going on. It could be the charges that have been brought against them, but they just don't feel like the City side of last season. It's very strange. And then Wednesday's clash, which saw Manchester United face off against Leeds United. Now I predicted 2-1 to Manchester United, but it's actually 2-2, and what a phenomenal game it was. Leeds were without Marsh, who lost his job after the Nottingham Forest clash, but they actually led for the majority of this match. Manchester United fought back though, and they salvaged a point. And it was really great to see Sancho score as well. But that Wilfred Gnonto, he's a brilliant player. Okay, so that was my reactions, I guess, to Game Week 22. We actually got 1 result right, which is very shocking. But now we're going to move on to the Game Week 23 predictions. And for Game Week 23, we start off with the Saturday fixtures, and we got West Ham United versus Chelsea. 2 London-based teams who are not having the best season at the moment. West Ham are currently sitting in 16th place, whereas Chelsea sitting in 9th. Chelsea spent over 600 million on transfers since Bowley came in, and with the players they brought in, it will take time to gel, as we saw with Forest. West Ham didn't go crazy in the window, but have slowly started climbing up the table and should be feeling confident heading into this clash with Chelsea. Chelsea have not had great home or away form this season, so it's hard to see where they'll grab points from, but I'm going to say a 1-1 draw. I do think it'll be another draw for the Potters boys. However, I think both teams will score in this one. I can't see either team having enough to win, but I do know that both teams have goal scorers in their ranks, so I reckon we'll see a goal from each. But Chelsea really need to start picking up points, or they could be dragged further down the table than they'd like to be, especially with the money they've spent. Then move on to another London-based clash, as Fulham host Nottingham Forest. Two of the newly promoted teams faced off in Craven Cottage, and out of the two, Fulham have definitely had the better season, currently sitting in 8th place, whilst Forest currently sitting in 13th, looking pretty good, I must admit. Fulham have all but established themselves as a Premier League side, and barring a disaster, they should be in the Prem next season. Forest didn't get off to the best start, but are looking much better after the break. The last time Forest visited Craven Cottage on our promotion push, we grabbed a huge win over Fulham. So I think Fulham might be looking for a bit of revenge, but you could argue they got that at the City ground. I'm going to say 1-1. I think Navas will be huge for this clash. Before we signed him, I was thinking this match could be a loss for us, but since we got those reinforcements in, I think we might be able to hold our own against this Fulham side. That's not to discount Fulham though, who have played some brilliant football this season and do look like the stronger team out of the two. I do think my biases play in here, but I honestly think we can share points in London. Likes of Keylor Navas, what a brilliant keeper he is. I think we'll be able to give Fulham a good run for their money in this match. And then move on to Leicester City versus Tottenham Hotspur. Now I've said it before, but Spurs are a strange side this season. They don't feel like a very strong team, but they also are a strong team if that makes any sense. Leicester themselves had a really tough season, but they look to be making steady progress up the table as well. This match could honestly go either way, as Leicester can be very potent in attack, but Spurs are very much the same, and on their day, play some brilliant football. Spurs will be without Romero after he saw red against City, but that shouldn't be too much of a problem for Tottenham. James Maddison has lifted this Leicester side since he came back from injury, and we'll definitely see Leicester scoring more goals now. I'm going to say 3-2 to Tottenham. I do think Spurs will still come out on top in this match, but it'll be a very tough match for them. Leicester will not make it easy, and as I said, they've got James Maddison back, so they could very easily turn it around and beat Spurs here. I do think Spurs will just be about able to beat Leicester. So I'm going to back Spurs in this match. And then move on to Arsenal versus Brentford. Another interesting London clash, as both sides are actually flying quite high respectively for their seasons. While I would love to see Brentford beat Arsenal like happened last season, I just can't see that happening. Arsenal did stumble against Everton, but they maintained their 5-point lead over Manchester City. Whereas Brentford, if they've been playing well this season, and if they keep up their performances, there's a good chance they could make Europe as well. Arsenal look like they've won the league, and it would be huge for them to throw it away. I think they've pretty much won the league barring a disaster, as I said. So it should be a good match between these two. Both teams play some brilliant football when they're in full flow. But I do think the result is pretty much already written. I'm going to say 3-1 to Arsenal. I do think Brentford will grab a goal because they play some brilliant attacking football and know how to break down sides and get through them to score goals. But Arsenal are the superior side with a wealth of quality within their ranks. Eddie Nketiah has stepped up to the plate as Arsenal striker and has proven he can score goals. In fact, that entire Arsenal front three is quite scary. But yeah, it should be a good clash for a neutral. Brentford will give Arsenal a good game. But I do think the Gunners have it in the bag for this one. And then we move on to Crystal Palace versus Brighton Hove Albion. Now this is the M23 derby and it's back. And both sides are currently having quite different seasons. Brighton are playing some really good attacking football, whereas Palace are struggling to score multiple goals. They can score one goal, but they usually fail to score more than just one. Selhurst Park should be bumping with it being their big derby day, but I don't know if that can even turn the tides against a strong Brighton side. Much like Brentford, Brighton could potentially make Europe this season if they keep up their brilliant form. Palace currently sitting in 12th, but they have every chance to get pulled into a relegation scrap if they're not careful. De Zerbi's Brighton are a very strong side and play some brilliant attacking football, with goals seemingly coming from all over the team, not just their front line. Palace don't really have that in their ranks. They only have a couple goal scorers, if that, and it's definitely nothing like Brighton have got going on. So I'm going to say 2-0 to Brighton. I don't think Palace will be able to get anything from this match, especially with their struggle to score goals. Brighton score goals for fun, and it's really going to be a problem for Palace if they can't shut them out. That being said, Palace do have flashes of quality, but are really missing out on an out-and-out goal scorer, and that shows in their results. but I do hope there is a bumping atmosphere for Derby Day. And then move on to Southampton versus Wolverhampton Wanderers. Now this is another relegation 6-pointer for both sides. A win would move Wolves further away from the relegation zone, whereas a win for Southampton may give them hope for survival. I feel like it may be a toxic atmosphere at St Mary's after what Nathan Jones has been saying to the media as of late, and their inability to bring results to what the supporters want, you know. Wolves' form has been up and down this season, but got an emphatic win over Liverpool, which will have given the squad a huge boost in confidence. Southampton do have good players, there's no doubt about that, but somehow they're just not clicking and performing how they should be. So I'm going to say 2-0 to Wolverhampton Wanderers. As I said, I don't think Wolves will have many issues with the Southampton side. They can play some good attacking football as we saw against Liverpool. Whereas Southampton, they'd do well to gain a point against Wolves, but I just can't see them doing that even at home. They're just not that type of side this season. Then move on to Bournemouth versus Newcastle United. Now this is a very important match for both sides, as it feeds into Newcastle's top 4 hopes and Bournemouth's hopes for survival. Newcastle have been brilliant this season and played some really good football, and they've given a good account of themselves throughout. Whereas Bournemouth, they've not really had a great season and have been hamstrung with injuries as of late, which is never easy for a side to deal with, to be fair. Bournemouth don't play bad football, and they can be a good side, and we've seen in some of their previous matches they can play some good football. Whereas Newcastle are very strong under the former Bournemouth boss Eddie Howe. He's really turned around this Newcastle side. Yes, he's had a lot of money in, but they haven't really spent crazy amounts of money. They've kind of been sensible, so fair play to them. Newcastle have cooled their goal scoring exploits as of late, but they're still a threat going forward with a lot of goal scorers throughout the side. I'm going to say 2-0 to Newcastle. I can't see the Magpies being too troubled by the Cherries, and while it probably won't be a domination job, it will be comfortable for Newcastle. Bournemouth can make it hard for the opposition to score, we saw that against Brighton, but I think Newcastle will be able to overcome any issues that Bournemouth may pose. They should fairly easily beat Bournemouth in my opinion. And then move on to Sunday's clashes, and we have another match between Leeds United and Manchester United. So after travelling to Manchester United, Leeds now host Manchester United. It was a very fiery Roses rivalry midweek, with both sides playing some of their best football we've seen. Leeds looked like they may be able to beat United in their own backyard, but that was not to be, as United fought back with Sancho and Rashford scoring goals. This clash at Ellen Road looks like a good one, especially with the past week's clash so fresh in the mind. Leeds may also have a new manager by this point, but that remains to be seen who they're going to hire and how it can impact the squad. I'm going to say 2-1 to Manchester United. I do think United will win this match despite it being at Elland Road. Leeds did shock United and those watching, but I can see United being more prepared to face this Leeds side now. Leeds did fall apart after Rashford and Sancho scored and then some sustained United pressure. So if the Manchester side can keep that up, Leeds will be in trouble. But they do need to watch out for non-Toad nonetheless. And then move on to Manchester City versus Aston Villa. Now before I even touch on the match itself, I do want to mention that City could be in some big trouble with some historical, dodgy financial dealings. Can't wait to see City in the Championship. Other than that, City host Villa and hope to put that loss to Spurs behind them and continue challenging Arsenal for the title. Villa's form has been up and down this season, but they look like they were stabilising their form until they met Leicester last week. Villa almost cost City the title last season, remember that match? It was brilliant, but we all know how that ended. This Man City side is strange as they're arguably stronger than they were last season, but they're not storming the league as many expected. Since getting rid of Gerrard, Villa have looked better and look to be cementing their position in the league for another season at the very least. I'm going to say 2-1 to City. I think City should be able to beat Villa, despite all the issues happening on and off the pitch, and I'm sure the Villa fans will have some good chance for them. This City side has conceded some silly goals here and there this season, but still look strong and shouldn't have much trouble breaking down the villains. I do think they'll concede, but it shouldn't be too much of an issue for them. And then move on to Monday's fixtures and we go to Liverpool versus Everton, a Merseyside derby that I'm very much looking forward to. If Lampard was still in charge, I'd expect Liverpool to walk this match. With Sean Dyche in charge, that's all changed. We saw Dyche at the wheel with their result over Arsenal, and it's got all the hallmarks of being a brilliant Merseyside clash. Both teams will be fired up for this clash, and the atmosphere at Anfield should be amazing. Liverpool haven't really been having their best season by their standards, currently sitting 10th in the league, whereas Everton are desperately trying to escape the relegation zone. Part of me fully believes that Everton can and will beat Liverpool, and I know the scenes at Anfield will be nuts if that happens. The other part of me knows that despite Liverpool not performing at their best this season, they should be able to beat Everton. I'm going to be ballsy here, and I'm going to say 1-0 to Everton. I just have this feeling that Everton will beat Liverpool. Dyche's very impressive return to the Premier League is a stark contrast to Klopp's season at the moment, where he's not performing as expected. If Everton keep playing like they did against Arsenal, while it was quite a defensive jammy match, they did get the points they needed. I think they have a very good chance of survival. Liverpool need to start picking up points, or they could find themselves closer to the relegation zone than they'd like, especially if teams around them start winning matches. But there's something just telling me Everton could do this, and I honestly think they could. So it remains to be seen, but imagine the scenes if it happens. And finally, Wednesday's fixture between Arsenal and Manchester City. What a way to wrap up this game week with a very juicy clash and a potential title decider. I've seen a lot of discourse surrounding this match, and most of them were saying that Arsenal's title chances will end here, as they've yet to face City in the league. We recently saw City beat Arsenal in the FA Cup, but those weren't exactly full strength sides. I mean, they were pretty close, with a few changes here and there. But because it is such a huge clash, many people would love to see a goal fest. But as we know, these high stakes matches usually aren't that. They're usually quite leggy, to be honest. This match could really go either way, as City have stumbled a couple of times this season, and Arsenal have been upset by Everton recently too. So this is a clash that I'm looking forward to. As I mentioned, it could decide who wins the title. I'm going to say 2-1 to Arsenal though. I do think Arsenal will beat City at the Emirates for sure. Arsenal are a very strong side this season, arguably stronger than City, so the title is really in their hands. Part of me still thinks Arsenal will bottle it though, to be honest. But in regards to this match, I do think Arteta will outplay Guardiola. He has a habit of sort of overthinking these sort of matches, and then, it doesn't end well for City, but that's neither here nor there. I think Arsenal will beat Man City here. And those have been my Premier League predictions for Game Week 23. If you've got any different predictions, please leave them down below. Yeah, it's really heating up. We've got some good clashes this week. I'm looking forward to it, especially the Merseyside derby and then Arsenal versus Manchester City. They're really good clashes, so hopefully we get some brilliant results. But more importantly, hopefully I get my predictions right. Anyway, I've been O2GT. If you have enjoyed, please do leave a like, subscribe down below. And yeah, I shall see you guys in your next video. Peace.